Hilchos Temidin Umusafin Perek Shmini, the laws of the daily and the additional sacrifices and services in the temple, chapter 8. Yesterday we started the sugya, the discussion of Musaf, of the additional sacrifices. We talked about Rosh Chodesh, Pesach, all the additional offerings of Pesach, including the Omer offering. Today we're going to be focused exclusively on Shavuot. Shavuos, the next holiday in the year. According to the Torah calendar, we begin by Nisan, by Pesach, then we go to Shavuos, and then tomorrow we'll talk about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then on the next day we'll talk about Sukkot. On Shavuos, we had two elements of the additional offering. First of all, there was the regular additional offering because it's a Yom Tif, it's a holiday. Second of all, there was the Shtei HaLechem, the two breads. We mentioned them yesterday in short, but this was the first time wheat was offered from the new harvest in the Beis HaMikdash. On Pesach there was a barley offering. On Shavuos there was a wheat bread offering. It was the only time they brought chametz, actual loaves of leavened bread in the temple. And we're going to see all the laws related to the Shtei HaLechem today. Halacha Aleph says the Rambam, B'yom chamishim, misfiras ha'omer. On day 50 of the count of the Omer. Yesterday we saw that right after the second day of Pesach, you begin counting every day, 49 days. On the 50th day, Hu Chag HaShavuos, is the holiday of the weeks of Shavuos, but Hu Atzeres. And that's also known in the Torah as Atzeres. Shavuos is the only holiday in the Torah that doesn't have a calendar date. When is Shavuos? 50 days after Pesach. Today our calendar is set, so it's always on the 6th of Sivan. But in times of old, when they were going on the moon, Shavuos could be either the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th of Sivan, depending on how large the months of Nisan and Iyar were, 29 days or 30 days. The point is, Shavuos you only count day 50 from Pesach. On this day, makrivin musaf k'mei musaf resh chodesh. We bring a additional offering in the exact amounts as the additional offering of the new month. Shnei parim va'ayil v'shiva kvasim kulam eilis. 2 bulls, a ram, and 7 sheep as burnt offerings. Useir chatas, and a goat as a sin offering. Ve'elohen ha'karbanos ha'amuris b'chumash ha'pkudim. These are the sacrifices listed in the Chumash of Numbers. That's Chumash Bamidbar. Ve'hem musaf hayoim, and they are called the additional sacrifice of the day. But in addition to that, v'oid mevi'in yestar al musaf bayom hazeh, we additionally bring over and above the additional sacrifice of this day, mincha chadasha shtei halechem, what's called the new flour offering, the offering of the shtei halechem, the 2 breads. Umakrivin im halechem, and together with the breads there were some more animals coming. Par ushnei elim v'shiva kvasim hakal elis, 1 bull, 2 rams, and 7 sheep, all burnt offerings. Useir chatas, a goat for a sin offering. Ushnei kvasim zevach shlamim, and 2 more sheep as a peace offering. The only time the community brought a peace offering. And these are the sacrifices mentioned in the book of Vayikra about Shavuos, the additional sacrifices. So if you combine the sacrifices mentioned in Vayikra and the sacrifices mentioned in Bamidbar, what do we have? Nimtza hakarev b'yom zeh yeser al shnei Temidin. So what's going to be offered today, over and above the 2 daily sacrifices, will be a total of shloisha parim ushloisha elim v'arba asar kvasim hakal esrim behema oiles, 3 bulls, 3 rams, 14 sheep, a total of 20 animals as burnt offerings. Ushnei seirei chatayis ne'achalim, 2 goats for sin offerings that will be eaten. Ushnei kvasim shlamim ne'achalim, and 2 sheep as peace offerings that will also be eaten. And here we dive into the laws of the Shtei HaLechem, the 2 breads. It says the Rambam, Shtei HaLechem inon boin ela min ha'aretz u min ha'chadash. First of all, they can only be brought from Israel and from the new grain, wheat that grew this year. Shenemar, because it says, mi moishvayseichem taviu lechem tnufa v'goymer. From your dwelling places you shall bring the bread for the waving, meaning from Israel. Lo matzu chadash, if there was no new grain, nothing had grown that year, at least yaviu min ha'aliyah. Bring from the best quality of the remaining grain. Halacha Gimel, fascinating law discussed in the Talmud, and if the Rambam brings it down, that means it's a literal question, and the commentaries struggle to explain how this such a thing is possible. But the Rambam says, Chitim sheyardu be'avim. If wheat kernels came down from the clouds, if it began to rain wheat, there was no new wheat that grew, but wheat literally came down with the rain. Some people actually explain scientifically there's actually ways this could happen. If the water evaporates in the right way, there could be accumulations of kernel-like substances that can be ground into flour. You can look this up, it's fascinating stuff. But the Rambam is dealing with the bottom line. What happens if you have wheat kernels that come out of the clouds? Yesh bahem safek. There's a doubt, says the Rambam. Im ani kaire bahem mimay shveisechem, oy einam mimay shveisechem. If I can apply to them the verse that says they came from places or not. So the Rambam is not at all puzzled with how they came to be. But if they came to be, we don't know if it comes from our places or not. Therefore, ideally, you shouldn't bring such wheat. If you did, that's all you had, and you brought it, it's kosher. How would they process, how would they make these two breads? They brought 3 sa'ah. It's a pretty big amount, dry measurement of new kernels. They would rub them and beat them like they would do to all flour offerings to really refine the kernels. They would grind them into fine flour. And then, they would then sift out of them a total of only 2 isarines after 12 rounds of sifting. So we're looking for really, really super fine flour. Out of 3 sa'ah, we ended up with just 2 isarines. The rest of the remaining flour could be redeemed from temple treasury. Anybody could eat it. If you make a dough, you must separate challah. Otherwise, it's exempt from other tithes, as we explain with anything that's redeemed from the temple treasury. These 2 breads coming from the new grain, even though before we just said 3 sa'ah turns into 2 isarines, the truth is we have to divide it. It's 1 isarin from every sa'ah and a half.
How much is about isarin?
Huh? If you want the exact number here,
Not exactly about.
isarin is about 2.4 liters. And as we just said, you sift it in 12 rounds of sifting. The lechem apanim she'uba min hayashan, contrast this to the weekly bread, the show bread, that came from older grain. Daile ba'achas esrei nafa. That was enough to have 11 rounds of sifting. You didn't have to have the extra 12th round. V'huba isarin mikol sa'ah, and it comes 1 isarin per sa'ah. Aval ha'omer she'huba min ha'sa'irim chadashos. The omer offering from yesterday, which is new barley, needs more. Eine ba min ha'muvchar. Doesn't have to come from the choicest. Elo mishalish se'in u'b'shlesh esrei nafa. You use 3 sa'ah and 13 rounds of sifting. So if you think about it, you have 11, 12, 13. The showbread 11 rounds, shtei alechem 12, omer 13. The kula on all of these types of offerings, if you added or subtracted from the original amount of flour, which you then refined, kosher, it's kosher. Back to the shtei alechem. You take both isarins, you knead them one by one, and you bake them one by one. The baking and the shaping took place outside of the temple premises, but they were baked inside in the special oven that was used for the mincha offerings, like every other flour offering. The forming of the breads does not override the holiday. They were offered on Shavuos, on the holiday, but they cannot be baked on the holiday. Surely not on Shabbos. You have to bake them before the holiday. Shanemar, because it says in the verse which permits cooking and baking on holidays, it says, Hu levada ye'aseh lachem. Any foods can be made for you. Lachem v'le legavaya. For you, you could override holiday. For the regular consumption, we can bake and cook on Yom Tif. But for Hashem, no. Baking does not override Yom Tif. You got to do it before. Haya erev Yom Tif Shabbos. This could happen very often even today. The day before the holiday is Shabbos. Shabbos goes right into Shavuos. Oifin oisan me'erev Shabbos. In this scenario, you'd bake them on the Friday before, v'nechales bashlishi la'afiyasan shu Yom Tif, meaning they were going to be eaten on the 3rd day after their baking, right? Because you have Friday, Shabbos, and then Sunday. In addition, the Torah says clearly that they're chametz. They have to be leavened. Yeah, here's the verse. Chametz te'afena. They must be baked chametz. The ketzad oisas. How do you do that? How do you make it leavened? Mevi sa'er mimaken acher v'noisnen l'seicha isarin. You actually bring a leavening agent, some type of yeast, from somewhere else, and you pour it into the isarin of flour. Then you fill up the rest of the cup with flour and thereby leaven it with the yeast. These breads had to be square, which actually means rectangular. They're rectangular. Oirech kol chala shiva tvachim, v'rach bar ba tvachim, v'gava arba etzbois. It was 7 tvachim long, 4 tvachim handbreadths wide, and 4 etzbaot, 4 finger breadths tall. This is really an etzba, the thumb breadth, so 4 thumb breadths tall. Halacha Yud Aleph. Keitzad hanafas halechem im shnei kivsei hashlamim. How do we go about waving the breads with the 2 peace offering sheep? The Rambam is referring to the verse that we'll soon quote. In the Torah it says that there was the 2 breads that were brought with all the other animals, and they were waved with 2 sheep. This is supposed to be a depiction of the Shavuos day. You can see the 2 sheep are over here, the 2 breads are carrying over here. So the Rambam says, walk me through the process of the waving of the breads with the sheep. Mevi shnei akvasim, says the Rambam, you bring both sheep, umenifam ba'edan chayim, and you wave them while they're still alive. You haven't slaughtered them yet, just you're waving them alive. Shenemar, as it says, vehenif oisam tenufa. You should wave them, waving. That's referring to the actual breads, but then it says al shnei kvasim, right, together with the sheep. If you waved each sheep on its own, that's okay. Ideally, you wave them both together. Each one on its own is also fine. And then you slaughter them, and you skin them. You take out the breast and the thigh from each one of them, because that's what you do from every peace offering. And you put them on the side of the 2 breads. So you see this is like a kind of black and white, but this is the depiction of the 2 breads. On top of it is the pieces of meat from the offerings. And then you put, Not cooked. You put both hands under. And you wave it all together in the east, like you would wave, or in the place that you would wave all the wavings of the flour offerings. Forward and backward, upward and downward. Again, if you wove each bread by itself, it's fine. If you waved each bread, right? Wove is for weaving. And then you offer on the Mizbeach all the parts that go from the sheep on the Mizbeach. And the rest of the meat goes to the Kohanim. It's a peace offering. Also the 2 breads themselves. The high priest takes one of the breads, he gets it all. And the second one goes to all of the watches of the Kohanim. There were 24 families, right? That one came each week. But on holidays, they were all there. So they all got a part of the second bread. And both breads had to be eaten for that day and the following half night till midnight, like any Holy of Holies sacrifice. You have the day that you slaughter it and the following night till midnight. What if you slaughtered both sheep, but instead of having 2 breads, you had 4 breads? If when you did this, you said, I only want 2 out of the 4 to become holy, so simply take 2 from the pile, wave them, and the rest of them you can just redeem them, they could be eaten outside like any other mundane stuff. If you didn't make the stipulation, then actually the bread doesn't become holy, because there's too much bread, and you don't know which bread is meant to be holy. On the other hand, shachat arba kvasim al shtei chalis. If you slaughtered 4 sheep with 2 breads, meishich shnayim mehen, take 2 of them, v'zoydek daman shalei lishman, purposely sprinkle their blood with the wrong intent, so they become disqualified. Umeinif hashnayim hanisharim maksherim im shtei alechem, and wave the remaining 2 with the 2 breads. Halacha yudalid shtei achalis ma'akvizu ezu u'shnei akvasim ma'akvin zeh. The 2 breads are essential to one another, and the 2 sheep are essential to one another, which means if you have one without the other, you can't bring either one. If one of the sheep died, or ran away, or became treif, becomes treif, meaning it becomes mortally wounded, where it will not live for 12 months. So yikach zug lasheni, take a pair for the second one, bring in a replacement, and you're good. Shachat echad lishmoi, yikach lezug. If one of them was slaughtered first, with the proper intent, and then the other one died or became a treif or ran away, it's okay. Take a pair for the first one. Take a partner for the first one. Halacha tezvav shtei alechem ma'akivim esakvasim. The 2 breads are essential to the 2 sheep. U'shnei hakvasim einon ma'akivim esalechem. But the 2 sheep are not required for the bread. In other words, if you only have sheep, you cannot bring the sheep, but if you only have bread, you could bring the bread. Once the bread was waved with the sheep, now they're all essential to each other. If the bread is lost, so the sheep are lost. If the sheep are lost, so the bread is lost. And you bring another bread and other sheep. The Rabbi once asked, and many commentaries ask, how could you bring other bread? You can't bake the bread on Yom Tov. You only bake them before Yom Tov. Where are you getting other bread from?
You bake extra before?
Huh?
You bake extra before just in case?
Very interesting. Very interesting. Some commentaries say that in this case where it's against your will, beyond your control, so what you actually do is you do it the next day. Very interesting answer. After the holiday, you bake new bread and you bring the sheep after Shavuos to make up for the sacrifice. But the Rebbe says that doesn't sound very logical. And the Rebbe says, based on a Mishnah, which the Rambam also brings down, that everything in the temple was always made in doubles or even triples, just in case one of them became impure or one of them became unusable. So it makes sense to say that they would actually bake more than 2 breads on the day before Shavuos, just in case something would happen to it, even though it involves a lot of bother to sift it 12 times and the whole thing, but they would do it. As a matter of fact, this is hinted in the previous halacha where it says a person who slaughters 2 sheep over 4 breads. How do you get 4 breads? Because there was many times, usually there was extra breads to go around. And therefore in this case, if the bread gets lost, you bring other bread and other sheep. If you have the scenario where you only have bread with no sheep, which is allowed, you can bring the 2 breads without the sheep. How do you do them? What's the procedure? A little bit different procedure. Yunfu, you have to wave them. And we purposely keep them over their proper time. And we burn them. We don't offer them. You're allowed to bring them, but we kind of purposely disqualify them. Why? There's a decree. Maybe the next year they'll find sheep, but they'll still bring the bread without the sheep, because last year we didn't do it, so why should we do it this year? So therefore, even though you could technically do it, we don't do it, we burn it. The special additional sacrifices that come with the bread, the bull, the 2 rams, the 7 sheep, and the goat, that come in accompaniment to the bread, they aren't essential to the bread, nor is the bread essential to them. You can bring either one without the other. Yud Zayin, talking about essentialness, Shnei Parim Shal Umusafin. Upar haba biglal alechem. On Shavuos, you have a total of 3 bulls. 2 bulls for the musaf, 1 bull for the bread. Those bulls, einan ma'akvin zeh, aren't essential to one another. You have these 2, bring them. You have this one, bring it. Same thing with the rams. Ayil shal musafayim, u'shnei elim abayim biglal alechem, einan ma'akvin zeh. The ram that comes for the musaf and the 2 rams that come for the bread aren't essential to one another. Same with the sheep. Shiva kvasim shal musafayim. The 7 sheep of the musaf with the 7 sheep of the breads are not essential to one another. Once they were slaughtered, they are all essential. And now that Rambam widens this rule. The daily sacrifices aren't essential to the additional sacrifices, nor are the additional essential to the daily. If you only have one, bring one without the other. Neither are the additional sacrifices within each other integral to one another, nor are the number essential. Keita, what does that mean? You only have 6 sheep, not 7. Makrivin shisha, bring 6. You only have 1, bring it. Whether it's the new month, today's Rosh Chodesh, whether it's the holidays, whether it's Shabbos. No need to bring the rest the next day or a different holiday. We have a rule. Communal sacrifices whose time passed, the carbon is cancelled. What if they only have 2 sheep? And this is an interesting scenario. Let's say today is Shavuos, okay? They only have 2 sheep for the musaf. Im yakrivu oisan lemusaf hayoim, ein lahen Temidin lemachar. If they're going to use it today for the additional sacrifice, they won't have the 2 sheep for tomorrow's daily sacrifice. Harei hadavar shakul, says the Rambam, this is equal. It's up to them. Im ikrivu lemusaf hayoim hikrivu. If they brought them today for the musaf, of course they've offered it, it's okay. V'im ratzu lahanicham lemachar latmidin yanichu. If they choose to leave it over the next day for the daily sacrifice, they can do that. Halacha is not going to weigh in over here. Or halacha will weigh in and say, you make your own decision.